April 24th, 2004. Eli Manning walks onto the draft stage at Madison Square Garden and does something that will fundamentally alter professional sports forever. He holds up the San Diego Chargers jersey, but refuses to put on the hat. The crowd erupts in boos. What everyone assumed was a spoiled rich kid's tantrum was actually the opening move in the most calculated power play in modern NFL history. This is the story of how one family didn't just dominate football. They rewrote the rules of how athletes control their destinies. From Archie's crash course in organizational dysfunction to Eli's draft day rebellion, from Peyton's strategic free agency masterclass to Archie's carefully orchestrated rise. The Manning family proved that in professional sports, the smartest moves happen off the field. 1971, New Orleans. Archie Manning gets drafted second overall into what can only be described as football purgatory. The Saints had won 13 games in 4 years. Fans literally wore paper bags over their heads to games. But while other quarterbacks might have demanded trades or given up, Archie did something different. He studied organizational failure like a graduate student. 14 seasons of watching front office incompetence, coaching carousel dysfunction, and ownership chaos taught him the most valuable lesson of his career. Context beats talent every single time. Archie endured 9 different head coaches, countless offensive coordinators, and rosters assembled seemingly at random. He watched talented teammates waste their careers in the Saints' dysfunction, but instead of becoming bitter, he became strategic. He started asking questions other players never thought to ask. How do successful organizations make decisions? What separates stable franchises from disaster zones? Why do some quarterbacks thrive while others with equal talent struggle? Archie was essentially earning a PhD in organizational psychology while getting sacked 40 times a season. Years later, Archie would tell his sons, "I learned what not to do by watching what didn't work." This wasn't football strategy, it was business intelligence, and he was building a curriculum for his children. But the family's most gifted athlete wasn't Peyton or Eli. It was Cooper, the oldest son, who dominated as a wide receiver until doctors discovered spinal stenosis. One diagnosis ended his football dreams instantly. Cooper later said, "My injury taught our family that talent can disappear overnight." That moment crystallized the Manning philosophy. You don't just rely on ability, you engineer every possible advantage. Cooper became the family's strategic advisor, channeling his football intelligence into business, and later, guiding Archie's recruitment with the same methodical approach that might have made him a star. The Manning dinner table became a strategic planning session. Archie would dissect Saints games, explaining how poor coaching decisions led to predictable failures. Cooper analyzed college programs like investment opportunities. The family was building an institutional knowledge base that would serve them for decades. 2004. The Manning family had spent months studying the San Diego Chargers organization. Coach Marty Schottenheimer was on shaky ground. The front office had a track record of mismanaging quarterbacks. Most critically, San Diego felt like a place where careers stagnated. So, they executed a plan that shocked the sports world. A week before the draft, Eli's camp informed the Chargers he wouldn't play for them. The backlash was immediate and vicious. The media called him spoiled. Fans accused the family of thinking they were above the draft system. But the Manning family had done something most prospects never consider. They had actually researched their potential employer. They knew the Chargers had drafted Ryan Leaf 6th overall in 1998 and watched his career implode. They understood that quarterback development requires organizational competence, not just talent. But here's the genius of the Manning strategy. They weren't just rejecting San Diego. They had already identified their target. The New York Giants had Tom Coughlin, organizational stability, and something San Diego couldn't offer, a media market that would amplify the Manning brand. The Giants had been studying Eli just as intensely. General manager Ernie Accorsi had been obsessed with landing a franchise quarterback for years. He understood that Eli's refusal to play for San Diego created a unique opportunity. While other teams saw a problematic prospect, Accorsi saw a quarterback with the intelligence to evaluate organizations. Behind the scenes, trade negotiations had been happening for weeks. Giants GM Ernie Accorsi was desperate for a franchise quarterback and willing to pay a premium. The Chargers, knowing they'd get nothing if Eli held out, eventually capitulated. Draft day arrives and the theater begins. Eli gets selected, holds up the jersey, refuses the hat, and gets booed mercilessly. Less than an hour later, he's traded to New York for Phillip Rivers and 3 draft picks. What looked like a public relations disaster was actually a chess move years in the making. Here's the beautiful irony. Phillip Rivers had a phenomenal career with San Diego. 8 Pro Bowls, over 60,000 passing yards, but he never won a championship. Meanwhile, Eli would defeat the greatest dynasty in NFL history, twice. Strategy had trumped raw talent once again. The draft trade established a precedent that reverberates today. Elite prospects began understanding they had leverage if they were willing to use it. The Manning family had essentially rewritten the power dynamic between draft-eligible players and NFL organizations. March 2012. After 4 neck surgeries and an entire season sidelined, Peyton Manning gets released by Indianapolis. At 36, many assumed his career was finished. Instead, Peyton turned free agency into a masterclass in organizational evaluation. He didn't just visit potential teams, he audited them. The process was methodical and thorough. Peyton requested detailed medical files on offensive linemen, studied injury histories, and analyzed coaching philosophies. He essentially conducted corporate due diligence on potential employers. Denver's pitch was a thing of beauty. John Elway and John Fox presented film breakdowns showing exactly how their system would maximize Peyton's skill set. They provided detailed medical reports on their offensive line's injury history. They even discussed how altitude training might actually strengthen his recovering arm. But the Broncos went beyond football. They highlighted owner Pat Bowlen's football-first mentality and decades of organizational stability. They showed Peyton Denver's track record of supporting veteran quarterbacks. They even discussed the city's mild weather and how it might benefit his recovery process. The Tennessee Titans offered a homecoming to his college state. Arizona offered more money. San Francisco had a better defense. But Denver offered something more valuable, a complete blueprint for another championship. Peyton's decision-making process became legendary among agents and players. He proved that veteran free agents could be just as strategic as draft prospects. The key was preparation, research, and understanding that football success depends on organizational fit, not just individual talent. The result? 4 years, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and 1 championship ring. The quarterback everyone thought was done had orchestrated one of the most successful late career runs in sports history. Once again, preparation had created opportunity. But the Manning family understood something most athletes miss. Your playing career is just the foundation. Real power comes from controlling the narrative afterward. Enter the Manning cast. What started as a COVID-era experiment became appointment television, averaging over 1 million viewers per episode. But here's the strategic brilliance. It keeps the Manning brand relevant without physical demands. Instead of competing with traditional broadcasters, they created something entirely different. They turned Monday Night Football into a living room conversation with America's football uncles. Celebrities now beg to appear as guests. Clips go viral every week. The format was genius in its simplicity. Rather than formal analysis, viewers got authentic reactions from 2 Super Bowl champions. The show generated massive social media engagement, precisely because it felt unscripted and genuine. Fans weren't watching a broadcast. They were eavesdropping on a family conversation. Peyton's Omaha Productions, Eli's children's books, the Manning Passing Academy. These aren't just business ventures. They're influence platforms that position the next Manning quarterback for success before he even declares for the draft. The Manning Passing Academy has become particularly strategic. Every summer, the top high school quarterbacks in America attend the camp. They learn football fundamentals, but more importantly, they absorb the Manning approach to career management. It's essentially a finishing school for future NFL quarterbacks, taught by the family that wrote the playbook on strategic career development. When Arch Manning eventually enters the NFL, he won't just be another rookie quarterback. He'll be the centerpiece of an already established media empire with built-in audience loyalty and corporate partnerships. The infrastructure for success was built decades before his first professional snap. Enter Arch Manning, Cooper's son, carrying the weight of dynasty expectations. But if you think his path has been left to chance, you haven't been paying attention. His recruitment to Texas wasn't about football alone. It was strategic positioning. Coach Steve Sarkisian confirmed that Peyton and Eli stayed hands-off, letting Arch choose his own path. But that hands-off approach is strategic too. It allows him to develop his own identity while benefiting from family infrastructure. The recruitment process itself was a masterclass in strategic thinking. Arch visited Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, all programs with recent championship pedigrees. But the Manning family evaluated more than just win-loss records. They studied coaching stability, offensive systems, and each program's track record with quarterback development. Texas offered something unique, a combination of tradition, resources, and patient development. Coach Steve Sarkisian had experience developing quarterbacks in both college and the NFL. The program had the infrastructure to handle media attention while providing space for growth. Most importantly, Austin felt like a place where Arch could establish his own identity rather than simply inheriting one. Here's where it gets interesting. Arch is draft eligible in 2026, but scouts believe the family will prioritize readiness over draft position. Peyton had 45 college starts, Eli had 41. Arch currently has just 2. NFL scouts report the Manning family will monitor which team holds the first pick and evaluate coaching stability before making any decisions. Sound familiar? But Arch's early performances have been rocky. Social media roasted him after shaky games, joking about being all commercials, no completions. The Heisman hype has evaporated, replaced by questions about living up to the family name. The criticism has been particularly brutal because of the NIL era. Arch signed endorsement deals worth millions before taking his first college snap. When performance doesn't match the hype, the backlash becomes personal and intense. But this might be where the Manning family's long-term perspective becomes most valuable. Yet this might be exactly where the Manning family wants him. Lower expectations mean reduced pressure. Extended development time means better preparation. And strategic draft timing could mean landing with the right organization, rather than the highest bidder. January 2025. Colorado coach Deion Sanders makes a stunning announcement about his son Shedeur and star Travis Hunter. If they're drafted by undesirable teams, he'll advise them to force trades. Sanders called it pulling an Eli. 20 years later, Eli's draft rebellion has become standard operating procedure. What once seemed like entitlement is now viewed as smart business. College basketball players demand transfers. Baseball prospects negotiate based on organizational development records. High school recruits study coaching stability before committing. The Manning family essentially invented athlete empowerment in team sports. They proved that elite talent doesn't have to accept whatever situation the draft provides. Research, negotiate, and strategically position yourself for maximum success. Teams now court prospects like any other business. Organizations invest heavily in culture because they know talent will evaluate everything. The league that once held absolute draft power now has to sell itself to incoming players. So what makes the Manning family the NFL's most strategic dynasty? It's not just 4 Super Bowl rings or 11 Pro Bowl appearances. They fundamentally altered the power dynamic between athletes and organizations. Before the Mannings, the NFL draft was a royal decree. Teams selected players. Players reported wherever assigned. The idea of refusing a draft destination was nearly unthinkable. But the Manning family understood something revolutionary. Leverage exists if you're willing to use it. They also redefined career management in professional sports. Before Peyton's strategic free agency, veterans rarely controlled their destinations. Teams assumed loyalty or desperation would force acceptance of any offer. But Peyton proved that preparation and strategic thinking create options even at career's end. Archie learned from organizational dysfunction. He taught his sons that context matters more than raw ability. Eli proved prospects could control their destiny. Peyton showed veterans could engineer perfect endings. Now Arch represents the next evolution. A player raised understanding that professional football is as much politics as athletics. Someone who's watched family members transform potential disasters into defining triumphs through strategic thinking. The Manning legacy isn't about touchdown passes. It's about proving the smartest players don't react to circumstances. They create them. Today, when prospects hire agents for draft positioning, when veterans demand no trade clauses, #@Meta, pause. When players refuse to report to unwanted teams, they're following the Manning playbook. The family once criticized for entitlement is now seen as visionary. They didn't just play the game better, they changed the rules. From New Orleans to New York, from Indianapolis to Denver, from Austin to wherever Arch lands next, the Manning family spent 50 years teaching professional sports a simple lesson. Strategy wins championships. But more importantly, it builds dynasties.